Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another in the Algorithm webinar series. We appreciate you taking time this afternoon to join us. We're very excited. We've got another in the CPM, Corporate Performance Management space that we're presenting today, and we're very excited because I know that a number of our customers have struggled with either financial reporting or actually getting the analysis done on their financial reporting that they'd like to do. And so we're very excited to be joined today by Oh-Hee Cho, who is with Solver, and they are our partner for BI360. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get things turned over to our presenter today. As I said, our presenter's name is Oh-Hee Cho. Oh-Hee is a solutions engineer at Solver, and she has worked as a consultant implementing BI360 in many different types of client environments and also industries. And having worked with a number of different industries, she's also built a number of different types of financial and operational reports that I'm sure are going to be germane for our audience here today. And with that said, Oh-Hee, I'm going to turn things over to you, and we're really looking forward and excited to see your presentation.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much for the introduction. So hi, everyone. So again, my name is Oh-Hee Cho, and I'm very, very excited to show you how BI360 can be used to enable your organization to make world-class decisions. So that's the theme for today, enabling world-class decisions with BI360. So world-class decisions, what does this mean? Making decisions isn't easy, even simple ones like, what should I eat? A lot of the decision making is based on past history. What did I eat the night before? Am I going to want to eat it again? If I look at my receipts, I realize I spent too much money eating out last night, so I should probably eat something cheaper tonight. Right? I mean, these are things I struggle with on a daily basis. But some of that decision could be based around different sources of information, like word of mouth recommendations from friends or websites like Yelp as a repository of restaurants to choose from. So the common theme around making any decision is gathering all of your sources to make the best informed information. All right. So I hope that in today's webinar, you'll be able to see how BI360 can help you make these world-class decisions for reporting purposes. All right. So before I jump into the actual product itself, I do want to talk about the challenges many users are facing today around reporting. All right. So many organizations are spending a lot of time manually creating reports using spreadsheets. We call this the overloaded manager. And as you can see, there's a lot of frowny faces, and this person looks extremely stressed out. All right. So why does this cause a major headache? There are many data sources that you need to report off of. So maybe today the data source that you use is just an ERP system like Macola or Acumatica. But other organizations typically have other data sources like a payroll data source to track personnel, or operational data source like CRM or something like that, or even a non-financial data source like Google Analytics, just to capture how many people visit your website on a daily basis. So accessing all of this data could be very difficult. Secondly, all of these different disparate data sources that we see here, like the ERP, CRM, payroll, websites, other, mean that you have to learn and use multiple tools to create your reports. So your ERP probably has its own version of the financial reporting that you can use. The payroll data source may have another sets of reports that you could use. But again, there's a lot of different reporting tools that you would need to learn. And therefore, creating reports could become a headache because, again, you would need to be an expert report writer on all of these various different tools. All right, and lastly, because of the different data sources, and that means you're probably gathering a lot of these reports together on an Excel file, and there are many Excel models floating around without any way to secure the data. And there's also no set way to standardize what the report templates look like. All right, so rather than wasting your life away as a stressed out, overloaded manager, I want to show you today how BI360 can be used to address all of these issues that come with manual reporting process. And we want to convert people to become a reporting hero, someone that no longer has to waste time preparing manual reports, but spends more time making world-class decisions. BI360 hopes to address the concerns of doing a manual report in the following way. So we have a data warehouse, bring all the different disparate data sources into a single place. I'll be talking about just how that data flows over, but essentially all of these different data sources will now be available at your fingertips for all of your reporting needs. Secondly, because all of the data will now be in one place, you will only have to use and learn one reporting tool, which is BI360, to create all of the reports that you need. And lastly, rather than spending all of your time manually copy and pasting reports to send them out to email, you can access all of the reports through an extremely convenient online portal. All right. So with that said, I just want to give you a high-level overview of BI360 product as a whole. So today's focus will be around reporting, and with our reporting module here, essentially it's being able to get all of your different data sources. So again, whether it's payroll data, ERP data, CRM data, or any other data, it could be an on-premise data solution or a cloud data source. You could bring all of that into our data warehouse. And again, once I get into the presentation, I'm going to talk about the different ways you can get the data here. All right. But once it's in the data warehouse, you can now do any kind of reporting against that data. All right. So that's what you see here. And reporting essentially is just pulling the data out into a format that's easily readable for your users so that you can do these types of analysis. Now, other features of BI360, which we won't get into today, but maybe for a separate webinar topic, is we do have a budgeting capability. Now, budgeting is essentially the ability to push data into the data warehouse. So remember, the data warehouse will also have all of your actuals coming from your different disparate data sources. So with those actuals, you can use the actual past year data to help you come up with the budget numbers for the future months. So that's essentially what the budgeting module does, is pushing budget data. And then with that budget data now in the data warehouse, you can do various reports against that budget data, whether it's actual versus budget, variance reporting, or all these different budget reports. And lastly, we do have dashboard capabilities. I don't know if you guys have heard of Power BI, but that's the data visualization tool that we use to create dashboards. And so essentially the Power BI tool can sit on top of our data warehouse, and with Power BI you can create all of the dashboards that you need. All right, so with that said though, our focus will be on this reporting piece today for today's webinar. And so with that, I am now going to get into the actual product to show you what BI360 reporting looks like. All right, so I mentioned earlier, as I was just introducing the reporting tool, I mentioned that you can access all of your reports in this convenient portal that you see here. This is our cloud portal. So for those folks today that are, getting Excel reports, copy and pasting them onto email and then sending them off, this is already going to save you a lot of time, because for those users that need to receive reports, they would just simply log into this portal to access whatever report they need. Now, the convenient thing about this is you just need access to internet, and then from there you'll be able to access reports anytime, anywhere. You could do it from a computer. You can even run reports from a mobile device for the folks that are on the go. All right, so with that, I'm going to log in, and I'm actually logging in as an administrator to the portal, which is why you're going to see all of the options available here on this menu option. But I do want to stress that these menu options will be customized based on the type of user license a user is set up with. So for example, if a user is only able to view reports, then this reporting menu will be the only thing they see in the portal. If they have the ability to do reporting and budgeting, and again, budgeting is a topic that we'll save for later, they'll see both. And again, because I am logged in as an administrator, I have full access, meaning I have the ability to set up the data warehouse. If there's any budgeting workflow that I want to set up, I also have administration settings to set up users, set up the security, etc. So before we get into these menu options, I do want to talk about this home page here. This home page, we're working on it so that you have the ability to enable other apps into this home page. But what we have so far is links that will help you with any issues that you come across in the portal. So whether it's submitting a support ticket, with a click of a button, you'll immediately be able to support any tickets for issues that you may have. Also, we have an academy where it has step-by-step tutorial videos on how to create a report or how to run a report or how to create a P&L report. And again, these videos are really helpful to just guide users along the report writing process. So all of this is just available in our home page. All right. So with that, I do want to briefly just talk about the administration setup piece. And the important thing here really is the security around the users. So given the fact that with BI360, you have the ability to bring in multiple data sources, that would mean that you would have to define which data source data a user has security rights to. So for example, a user may only be able to access GL data from your ERP, but they can't access any of the payroll data that you may also bring over into the data warehouse. So the point here is that you can get really granular with how you set up the security. You can set up security at the data source level, meaning, again, one user only has access to GL data, another user may have access to both GL and payroll data. You also have the ability to set up security at a dimensional level. And when I say dimension, I mean, things like I can limit security for a specific account only, or a specific department only, or a specific location or entity, or you name it. However way the dimensions are set up in your ERP, you have the ability to set up your security according to those dimensions. So you can get really granular with how you set up the security. All right. So with that said, I do want to talk about this data warehouse here. And the data warehouse is essentially what will ultimately allow you to bring all of your different data sources into a single place so that you're using one tool for all of your reporting needs. All right, so with that, there's several ways you can bring the data over into our data warehouse. As you can see here, we have a bunch of different connectors already built out for all of the different ERP sources that are out there. This list is continuously growing. We have a great team of developers that are constantly working to build connectors for all the different data sources that are out there. All right, and so with these connectors, you essentially go through a mapping process where you define what field from the ERP you'll need for reporting purposes. So maybe you just need GL data from the ERP, or you want to bring in all the AR and AP modules as well. So you would need to define exactly what you need to report off of from the ERP or the data source, and then you would just map that into BI360 Data Warehouse. And then with that mapping process, it's pretty straightforward as long as you're familiar with the tables from the data source. Meaning you're familiar with the table names and what they're called. You could just drag and drop those fields in to bring them over to the BI360 Data Warehouse. All right. So once that mapping work is done, you would need to set up a schedule. So to determine how frequent do you need this data refresh in the data warehouse for your reporting needs. So typically I've seen with ERP, GL data, a nightly refresh is more than enough. But then, when it comes to operational data, you may need data to be refreshed on a more frequent basis, maybe every 5 minutes, every minute, every second. So you would determine the frequency, and we have the ability to set that up. And then the nice thing about setting up a schedule is you just do the setup once, and you don't ever have to touch it again. It'll automatically bring in the data over according to that schedule. Now, we also have another option, and this is pretty common around month-end close time when you guys are making a lot of journal entry changes in their ERP itself, and you want to see those changes reflected right away in all of your reports, and you don't have time to wait for the nightly integration to load. Then we also have a on-demand refresh that you could do. It's just a simple click of a button where it will automatically refresh the data as well. All right, so that's one way you can bring data over into the data warehouse. The other way is if you have, if a connector isn't built out yet, then we have a CSV connector, and essentially the CSV will be able to bring any data that you could export out into an Excel CSV file, and through the CSV connector, we can also bring data over on a scheduled basis as well. All right. So again, the point here is of this data warehouse is that it's also scalable, so meaning maybe you only have an ERP data source for now, and that's all you're really concerned with in terms of reporting. But as your organization grows, maybe you'll add in a payroll data source, or you'll add in a CRM data source, or operational data source. And so the data warehouse can grow with you at your pace. All right. And so with that, now that we've talked about the data warehouse and we've talked about how it could be used to bring all these different data sources in, we're now ready to report off of the data. So with that, I'll now go into reporting. All right. So I do want to, I will be showing you various examples. I'm going to start off by showing financial related examples just because I know that seems to be the core reporting needs for a lot of folks. But I do also know that this group of, the group of people here on this call are in the manufacturing distribution space. So I'll also show, reports from that industry as well. All right. But here what you see in my cloud portal, I have all of my reports loaded on, and I have over 200 reports. And so essentially, I need some way to organize all of my different reports here. And so that's what you see here, these category folders. You can set up as many category folders as you need to help you organize the different reports that you have. And given with BI360, you now have the ability to bring in multiple different disparate data sources. You're going to need a way to organize and sort those out. So here I have a folder around all my financials. I have a folder here for my sales-related reports. I have a folder here just for my expense analysis. So again, you can create as many of these folders as you want. And the nice thing is you can also control who has access to view these folders. It's very easy to share these folders with other users within the system. You can share these folders for a single user at a time, or you can send them out to multiple roles that are set up. But again, the point of these folders is that it's customizable to the way you set it up. All right. So with that said, again, because I just have so many reports and there's no real easy way for me to just sort through which reports I want to show you, I did create a folder for this specific webinar. And as you can see now, the report list just condensed down, and it makes it very easy for me to show you guys the specific reports that I want to show for this webinar. All right, so with that said, we'll start off with a simple example P&L, and that's the most commonly requested reports across all organizations. All right. So a couple things to note about our BI360 reports is, one, they're all driven by these parameters that you see here. So in this example, we have a parameter set up for entity, and by clicking this dropdown, I can pick and choose which specific entity I want to run this P&L report for. The way this particular report is set up is I can only choose a single entity at a time, and this is also where security would kick in, meaning if I'm an end user and I only have rights to see U.S. data, that's the only thing I can even see and select from this list. But say I'm the CEO of the organization, I have rights to see across all of my entities, then as long as I log in with my CEO credentials, I'll be able to see and select from this entire list here. All right, so again, this would be catered towards the specific user that's opening up this report. All right. But I mentioned here that entity is one of the parameters that you could pick, but really you can create a parameter off of any dimension. So whether it's, running this report for a specific department or running it for a specific location or region or for a specific customer or you name it, you can create as many of these parameters as you want. And essentially, these parameters are going to give you the ability to slice and dice your report to the exact level of granularity that you need. All right. The other parameter that's pretty important here is this is a P&L actuals to budget variance report. And with our BI360 budgeting tool, you have the ability to capture multiple budget versions. And so here you can select which particular budget version you want to compare your actuals to. And so whatever budget version you select here, it's going to populate this budget month column. And the last but not least, this is pretty straightforward, but this period parameter is important because it essentially allows you to reuse this template over and over again, whether it's running reports to see historical data or running it for the current period or reusing this template for future months. This is essentially what makes the report dynamic and allows you to reuse this template over again. All right, so hopefully you're already beginning to see how the fact that these templates are dynamic will help you save so much time. If you're currently having a manual reporting process where you have to generate a report, copy and paste that, send it out. With BI360, you just simply change the parameters here. I'm going to run it for a new month. I just simply type that in, and with a click of a button, I'll automatically get the data according to this new month that I've selected here, along with the other parameter criteria that have been selected here. All right, so other things to note is that our reports are created with our Excel-based report designer. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. But the benefit of designing with an Excel add-in tool is that users love Excel. They're really familiar with Excel. And so it's very easy to use to create a BI360 report. So essentially, you can utilize all of the Excel functionality that you're already familiar with to bring over into a BI360 report. So for example, all of the formatting that you see here, it's using Excel formatting. So you can pick colors that match your company logo, get some really sharp, good-looking reports. I know some accountants can get really particular around, I want a single underline here or a double underline. And again, you would just use Excel to do all of that. The other thing that you may notice here are these coloring systems, the red and green, and this essentially is just using Excel conditional formatting, where you can define rules and say, hey, if the variance is a positive number above this percentage, display the color green, but if it's a negative number or a low number, display the color red. So that's what you see here, and ultimately this is to help you do better analysis, because quickly looking at this report, I can see, hey, it looks like there's some negative variances here. Let's research into why this is the case. All right. Speaking of doing variance analysis, whatever information you find out, you could input them as comments. All right. So as you can see here, it looks like there's a big variance that you see, and with BI360, you also have the ability to drill down to dig deeper into why that big variance might have taken place. And so you can drill down into the summary level, you can drill down into the transactional level. So again, with the click of a button, you immediately have access to any drill down information. And from that, you can now input a comment explaining why there was such a high variance for this particular month. All right, so I'm just typing in the comment of high variance, high revenues due to increase of market spend. All right. Sorry, I can't type correctly. Okay. All right, so other things to note is I mentioned, the Excel, the BI360 and Excel add-in, so you can utilize Excel functionality. And so That's what you see here with this grouping as well. This is an Excel feature where you have the ability to see information at a, entire year-to-date amount, or if you want to see the individual months that make up that year-to-date amount, you have the ability to do so. Here, down with our expense rows, you can see things at a categorized, summarized, categorized level, or if you want to see things at an individual account, you can simply uncollapse these buttons and you can see the additional detail. So hopefully you'll be able to see this once we get into the designer piece, but you really have a lot of customization and power around how you view your information, whether it's at a summarized level, whether you want things to go down the rows, or whether you want information to go across the columns, or say you even want information breaking out across tabs. Say you want to see this P&L with multiple entities going across the tabs. You have the ability to easily control that as you design this report. All right. So once you run the report, there's several ways to share this report. You can, with a click of a button, actually, if I want to send this report off to a non-BI360 user that's outside of my organization, I can simply just hit this export to Excel button. And this I thought was a pretty straightforward feature, but when I show this to folks, they get really excited because you'll now see that once I export this out to Excel, it retains all of the Excel features and functionality because, again, it was originally created in Excel. And so even the formulas get retained. And so what users like to do with this is they like to do what-if analysis because this is now just a flat Excel spreadsheet. It's not tied to a database or anything like that. So you can do some what-if analysis and say, hey, for this month, what if our product revenues was this instead? How will the rest of my P&L look like? So again, these are the types of things that you can do with the simple fact that when you export a report template out to Excel, all of these templates get retained. All right, so that's one way you can share this, and from here you would just copy and paste it and send it off to a user. But the other way that you can send reports automatically within the system is just simply clicking on this share button that you see here. And I can share it with an individual user at a time, or I can share it with multiple users at a time. I'm actually going to go ahead and share this report to myself. But whenever you share a report, it gets archived, and that's why this turned green here. And it's to indicate that now it got sent to that user's archive folder. All right, so what I'm going to do is now switch over here into this archive folder. Archive is great because we designed it so it's very simple for users. And this is great for folks that don't ever have to generate a report on their own, like meaning they don't ever have to pick and choose a drop down and say, hey, I want to run this report for this department or this period. Someone already generates that report for them, and these archive users only need to see the final published numbers. So here's that report that I just shared. I shared it with myself, but it ended up in this archive menu here. And when I open it now, you'll notice that there's no report execution time. There are no drop downs for me to pick. Someone already executed this report for me, and I'm looking at the published number. So essentially, this is mimicking the concept of sending a report out manually via email. But the really powerful thing about this is that you still have the drill down capability. So again, as I'm looking at this report and I see this big variance here, I can right click on an amount and see what is causing this big variance. All right. And other things that you can do in the archive menu while we're here is we have something called playlists. Playlist is really, really great for when you're creating a report package, and I know a lot of organizations do this, whether it's a board package or a pack of reports you have to send out to like the bank or other external users. But again, with that process, there's a lot of manual copy and pasting going on. People will get all these spreadsheets together and then copy and paste it into a PowerPoint slide, and then they have to type up the table of contents. Well, with BI360, it's pretty automatic in creating this package, because within BI360 you will have access to all of the different reports that you need. So whether it's the P&L report that I just sent to myself, or it could be a balance sheet or a travel report. And with BI360, you really can have all these different types of reports. It could be a payroll headcount report. It could be, again, all the different financial statements like a balance sheet, a capex, a cash flow, etc. And again, with the click of a button, you gather them together, and then you just simply hit add to a playlist. All right. So I already have a playlist already prepared for this webinar. And again, you can have different playlists. You can have one around monthly presentation, one for budget presentation, one for the board presentation. And the nice thing about this playlist is that there is this option here called Show Playlist. And so imagine yourself that you're in a room and you have a projector on the screen, your bosses are there, and you guys are just analyzing all of these reports together. So like the PowerPoint slide, you can just simply toggle through all the reports that make up this package. So whether it's starting from high-level information around your company's strategy, and again, these are all types of things that can be captured within BI360, and you can see information at an extremely high level. Then you go into the revenues of your organization. You can incorporate any kind of graphs into your reports, and these are essentially just Excel graphs. The nice thing about these graphs is that they'll update every time you refresh the report for a new period or a new entity or a new department. All right. This is a really cool example here, this comment analysis report, because I showed you the ability to enter comments with BI360, comments that may explain away big variances. And so essentially any account that has a comment associated with it, those are important ones that you need to spend extra time analyzing. And so essentially this report gathers all of those accounts into a single report, and you can now easily see what the comments were associated with those accounts with the big variances. All right, and again, the really nice thing about this playlist view is that as you're digging into the numbers and trying to explain why there's a big variance, normally you would have to pull out your computer to do additional research to find out why there was such a big variance in this particular account. But the nice thing about Archive here is that you just simply right-click and you'll immediately be able to access all of that drill-down information with a click of a button. All right. So here, again, most of my examples are around financials, but I will get to showing some other operational related reports. But whether it's sales report by customer, sales by product, you could even have a travel report. So that's something we do in budgeting. You have the ability to do a travel budget, and that's something you can report off of as well. And you can see which department is how the departments are spending for each travel type categories, whether it's like meals or parking or hotel, etc. All right. I talked about bringing in payroll as a data source. That's pretty common across all organizations, and they want to see like employee salary information or headcount information. And so here, this is a headcount related report that shows me which specific departments I need to do some hiring in. So that's the purpose of this report. But again, I want you guys to understand that the true benefit of the data warehouse is that you can now bring all of these different disparate data sources into a single place so that you're using one tool to access all of your reports. All right. So with that said, I'll just quickly summarize that Archive is just a great way to share reports to users within the system. You can also create these nice monthly board package presentation type reports as well. And then the really key thing here is that for Archive is you still have the ability to drill down into any of your reports. All right, so far we talked about the different ways you can share a report. You can manually export any report into an Excel spreadsheet, email it off. That's a manual process. The other way to share a report is through this archive feature where you just simply click share and it'll show up in that user's archive folder here. The other option is our publisher tool. This is a separate module, but within the publisher tool, you also have the ability to, create report packages, determine what those report packages will look like, but you also have the ability to schedule the report distribution. So whether it's a report that goes out every month, every week, every day, you just determine the schedule of it, and you set it up once, and this publisher tool will automatically distribute the reports out for you. So you have several options with how you want to distribute your reports out. And then, of course, the fact that this portal allows you to access your reports anytime. There are also users that could just log in from wherever they are, and if they need to see and run a report, they just do it themselves on this portal. All right. So with that said, I do also just want to show you all the different types of reports you can do within BI360, just because a lot of the reports are around the financials. But here, I talked about Google Analytics as a data source. That's a total non-financial data source. That's actually something we use internally at Solver, at my company. We like to keep track of how many people visit our website. So that's something that's captured in Google Analytics, and we brought it over into our data warehouse. So here we see the information, how many people visit our website on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, how many of these visits are new visits, right? But the really, really powerful thing that you can do with a data warehouse is, given that the data warehouse now stores actual data, actual GL data coming from the ERP along with Google Analytics data, I can combine those two different data sources to create a KPI like marketing cost per web visitor. And essentially, these types of KPIs, the ability to join different data sources together, is ultimately what's going to give you overall insight into your entire organization, so that truly you can make the world-class decisions that you need to make. All right. So the other tab here is just showing, what sites are referring to our website here. But really, the point here is just to show you that we totally have the ability to bring in non-financial data sources as well. All right. This is a report that I'm not an accountant, so this is just something I like to show though. But when I do show it to accountants, they just get really excited. But these are types of reports that can help with reconciliation process, where you can say, hey, there's a P&L net profit amount balance with the balance sheet retained earnings amount, and there are these various checks that you can do, and also these statuses to help you indicate, to help let you know that there's some within the reports there's some validation work that you need to do. All right, and so actually before I go into the power user of how do we create these reports, how do we modify these reports, I do also just want to show you some manufacturing distributions related reports. I have that on a separate environment here. So I'll just quickly go through this. But I do really want to emphasize that with BI360, you really can have all these different types of reports. You're not limited to just financial reports. I'm just going to fly through these. But we have, inventory report, where, you can use these conditional formatting to help you know, whether an inventory quantity, you have the right amount of it, right? You can set these roles. We have all of these different sales by product class reports. We also have dashboard looking graphs, and essentially these are just Excel graphs that we've incorporated into BI360. But again, the nice thing about these graphs is that they'll update automatically anytime you refresh the report. So whether it's capturing, the different products, sales, gross margin, your top 5 customers, I think these graphs are a great way to capture that information. All right. So with that said, I do now want to switch modes here, show you how you can go about designing the reports and modifying reports in Excel. So I'm going to put on my power user hat here. Of course, only power users will have the ability to design, edit, modify reports. All right, so with that, to create any report within BI360, you just start from this portal here. You simply click New, and then you type the name of your report, and it's going to open up the Excel application. And rather than waiting for it to open up, I already have an Excel file open. So as you can see, this is our report designer. It truly is Excel based. This should look very, very familiar to you. The only big difference is that once you install BI360, you'll see this BI360 add-in tool, and you'll have access to this design pane here. So again, keep in mind this is only something that a power user will have the ability to do. All right, and then from here, this is where you'll now be able to access all of your data sources essentially at your fingertips. So each of these little blue cubes that you see here represent a data source that you choose to bring over into the data warehouse. So whether it's just GL financial data, you see that here, or it could be payroll, right? We saw some reports around headcount information. That's coming from a payroll data source like ADP. If I click into this payroll module, you'll see that all of the fields relate to payroll data, fields like employee hire date, end date, what their sick hours are, what their title is, what their salary information is, bonus information, commission information, etc. Now, the beauty of this is we made this really easy for any report power user to be able to create reports because all of this is in plain English. Other tools that you may have used in the past, you're dealing with table names, like SQL table names that are very technical and hard for any business user to learn and create reports. But again, we made this part extremely easy so that you just simply just identify the field that you want to see in a report, and you just drag and drop that in. All right, so that's what the payroll module looks like. I'll just go into the GL module for now, and I'll create a simple trial balance report. But again, whether you're creating a report out of the GL data source or the payroll data source or the Google Analytics data source, whatever it is, you apply the same drag and drop method to create your reports. All right, so with that, I'm just going to quickly build a trial balance report. And I mentioned that formatting is all 100% Excel. I'm going to do that here. And you can also, of course, insert your company logo, pick colors that match your logo, etc. Now, from here, I mentioned everything is drag and drop, and it literally is just that. So in my trial balance report, I want to see my natural account. So all the segments of every chart of accounts are going to show up as an individual department. So whether it's account or department or entity or location, whatever it is, it's going to show up here. And essentially, the fact that they're all parsed out individually will allow you to get the granularity that you need, where you can now slice and dice at whatever level that you want. All right, so with that, I'm going to drag and drop the account field in, and this is where I'm going to say, hey, I want this account to go down my rows in this report or go across the columns in my report. I say, hey, make it go down the rows. I also want to see my account descriptions associated with this. All right, and last but not least, I want to see my amount fields. I'm going to keep it extremely simple for now. All right, so as a power user, I like to run my reports time to time just to make sure, the changes that are making look correct, and so far so good. I just need to make sure that everything nets to 0 in this trial balance report. All right, so I'm going to do that. I mentioned that any calculations that you need to do in a report, whether it's just simple ones like this, where you're just doing a summation to see if everything nets to 0, or if you have any KPIs in your report where it's, this amount divided by this amount to come up with this KPI, you would just use Excel formulas to set those KPIs up. So hopefully already something that you're familiar with and it's not a huge learning curve. All right, so I went ahead and used the equal sum formula to net my trial balance out. And from here, I'm actually going to convert this into a very simple P&L report. I'll start off by building out the revenue side. So right now, I don't have any filters on my report yet, but I need to tell BI360 that I only want to see my revenue accounts now because I'm building out the revenue piece in this report. So several ways to do it. If I hit this lookup icon, it's going to populate a list of all of my revenue accounts from my ERP system. Now I can use my mouse to select the accounts that I want to include. There's this option called Use Ranges where if you check this option, um, anytime you create a new account in your ERP and it happens to fall within this range that you specified here, it will automatically, BI360 will automatically pick it up for all of the reports that utilize this range. So this is going to save you so much time. Rather than, manually creating that new account code in all 10, 20 of your reports, BI360 will automatically pick it up. All right. The other way you can filter for this specific revenue account is if you already have your accounts mapped to an account categories, BI360 allows you to categorize your accounts in however way you want with however different menu roll-ups. Very easy to do. So with here, I've already mapped my accounts, identify what my revenue accounts are. So I'm just going to select that here. And then, of course, when I run my report now, you'll just see the revenue accounts that I've selected. All right. Moving on. Again, I'm building a very simple P&L report, so I'm going to build out my expense side here. I'm going to call this expenses, and then the only thing I need to do is just change the filter behind it. So now I actually pull in my expense accounts. Okay, and last but not least, we're just, again, going to keep this super simple, and we're going to do a net income calculation. And right now, this is so simple to do. I could pass controls over to you guys, and you guys could do this. It's just literally using equals revenue total minus expense total to come up with this. All right, so given that this is a pretty straight, this is a simple example, but it took me less than a minute to build this out. It just took me really 2 lines of what we call coding to set this up. But when I execute the report, it's able to expand out into like a 100-row report. And again, that's automatically done in BI360. So from here, once you build out your rows, you have a lot of options with what your columns look like. It can vary from doing actuals to budget and a variance column, or it can be year-to-date versus prior year-to-date and a variance column. Or you can have your P&L broken out by all of the locations you guys operate in, or entities, or the departments, or you name it. It's just a matter of you just defining what the columns will look like, and you just simply drag and drop it in. So here, I'm going to just keep it simple, and I want to see my P&L broken out by departments, or it could be, again, any dimension. All right, and instead of the department code, I actually want my department description displayed. So again, I'm just going to drag and drop department description instead. And so now when I run this report, I have my P&L, and it automatically breaks it out across all of my departments. Of course, I could easily add a total column at the end to total what all of the departments roll up to be, and that's just you would just use Excel formulas at that point. All right, so again, this is one way you can see this information. Right now, it's displaying all of my departments, but say I wanted to limit departments based on what the user security is set up for. So in that case, I would create a parameter. If you remember back in the portal in the beginning of the presentation where we had those little white drop-down boxes, and you can pick and choose for a specific department or entity. Well, that's the parameter wizard is essentially how it gets created. And once you go through the wizard, very easy to do, you can now simply choose from this drop-down list here. And of course, this is also tied to security so that users will only be able to access the department data they're set up for. All right, so now that I've ran this for these 2 departments, that's the only department information that gets displayed in the report. Other things that you can do is I talked about, the ability to control, things going down your rows, things going across your columns. You could even have things expand out across tabs. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. And actually, with this entity dimension, we have a tree set up for it. I don't know if you guys have any roll-ups or tree setups in your organization. With BI360, you definitely have the ability to do that. You can even capture multiple versions of a tree. And here in this parameter box, I'm essentially picking and choosing which tree I want to run. All right, so here's my full-blown tree. This is a geographical tree where I have these different countries rolled up into regions, and these regions eventually roll up into a consolidated top view. So I'm going to run this for the Western Hemisphere. And I turn on the option for this to now expand out across by tabs. So here is my Western Hemisphere tab. This tab combines Canada and US data into this single tab. Canada gets its own respective tab here, and then the US data gets its own respective tab here. If I want to do the full consolidation, I just simply click the top level, and it's essentially now going to produce a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tab report. Essentially, each node of the tree will produce its own tab. So this is the full consolidated page. If I drill down, I can truly see that it's made up of all of my different regions of Canada, Europe, etc. But then, of course, now each node of this tree, for example, the Asian region has its own tab, Asia has its own tab, EMEA has its own tab, etc. So this is very, very powerful because it essentially took a single tab report and it's able to expand it out into a multi-tab report depending on what gets selected on the tree. So everything I've shown you so far is creating a report out of the GL. But again, you could now really create a report off of any data source because it's available at your fingertips here in this design menu. So whether it's creating a payroll report from your payroll data source or a travel report from your travel data source, it's the same drag and drop concept. So here now, if I want to create a payroll report, I want to see the employee. I want to see, the employee title. I want to see when they started working, hire month, end month, right? You just start dragging and dropping the fields that you need to see in your report. All right. So with that said, I completed the report. I like the way it looks. I now want to be able to share this report with my users. Very easy to do. Again, I no longer have to copy and paste things over into email. I just simply hit this upload report button. All right. And then with that click of a button, it automatically shoots it back out into this portal here. And remember, this portal is where users can essentially access all the reports that are available. And so with that, I'm going to, this is the report that I created. I called it a test. And now if I can open it, here are the parameters that I've created within the design of the report. If you remember me creating a parameter for department, here's my tree picker as well. And then this is the report that I've created. And I just ran it for a single report and a single entity at a time. But essentially, the report will now automatically available for all of your reports to access. All right, so with that, I'm going to do a quick summary before we open up the floor for questions. But essentially, the BI360 portal is where you can access all of the reports that are created in Excel. The Excel design tool, it's extremely easy to use. We find that a lot of business users are able to pick it up with just a couple of days of training. But really, the true benefit that you're going to get with BI360 is that you now have the ability to combine all of your different data sources into a single place. And with an easy-to-use design interface, you can create whatever report that you want or need. And then with that, you can deploy it by pushing it out to this portal so that users can easily access the reports that have been created. All right, so with that said, I do want to open up the floor for questions with the remaining time that we have. So with that, I'll just look into the chat window just to see if
actually, Ovi, I can do it much easier for you. I've got questions lined up for you.
Great. Thank you.
So first of all, as you pointed out, we have both Acumatica and Macola customers who are attending this webinar. And so the very first question I wanted to address was, we've got the question, I didn't see Macola listed as a data source. Would it fall under the CSV integration?
So I personally am not familiar with the data source, meaning I don't know if it's SQL-based or if it's on-premise.
Macola is SQL-based.
Okay, so one thing I did so we do have a SQL connector to bring in any SQL-based data. So rather than using the CSV connector, you would be able to use a SQL connector to connect to Macola to bring that data over into the data warehouse.
Okay, great. And that leads into a couple of other questions that we got about the data warehouse. Who specifically does the data mapping? Do customers do this typically, or is there, you talked about needing an understanding of the table structure of the source data, and I'm wondering, because obviously many ERP users don't understand that table structure level, I'm wondering who is responsible for, or who does that data mapping?
Yep. So it would depend on the organization's capabilities, but you're right in that there are some organizations where they're not familiar with, and in that case, Solver could assist with that implementation. It would be part of the implementation where you bring the integration setup. So we could walk you through it. We have tons of experts on various data sources that do understand the mapping structure. So Solver can assist with that. However, if someone in your organization, you say you guys have a DBA person, that person could identify the field, and because the integration setup is so easy, it's just like a drag and drop process and it's a wizard that you go through. That DBA would be able to do it on his or on their own.
Oh, okay, great. And then the data warehouse itself, where is it located? I know that there, for instance, with Acumatica, different deployment locations available. People can have it hosted in a SaaS environment with Acumatica. They can have it on premises. Where is the data located? Is it the data warehouse located, that is?
Great question. So with BI360, we offer an on-premise solution and a cloud solution as well. Our cloud, we use Microsoft Azure for the cloud. So it would just depend on your preference. We are finding that a lot of customers are leaning towards cloud these days. That's been the trend. But we do also offer an on-premise solution where it could be privately hosted, just depending on the customer's needs.
Okay. And I know a lot of customers now are very concerned about data security. And so that, I think, is probably leading or driving some of those questions about where the data is located. I know that you talked about some of the security rules and the ways that you can set up security in BI360, but on the data warehouse side, I think that that's a concern.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the, you mentioned BI360 Academy, and could you just explain a little bit? Is that a self-guided type of training? Are there videos? Is it text data? Is it function like a wiki? Just a little bit of more information about the Academy.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have someone devoted entirely to the Solver Academy and is constantly building content, but it is a self-guided tutorial video that walks you through step by step. There are even quizzes along the way just to ensure you're understanding everything. There are the videos for those, those hands-on type of learners. We also have manuals with step-by-step instructions, screenshots. So the Academy is just a great resource for folks that are just wanting to learn how to create reports.
And obviously, different people learn differently, and so it's great that you've got both the video type of training available, but also user manuals. I just had a customer not long ago that said, "Is there a user manual?" I read everything, so
Right.
that's terrific. Now I'm going to jump ahead because we got a different question. Google Analytics, and you referenced about a way to get website traffic data. What about other types of sources? And I'm assuming it's going to fall under the other data sources that you can bring data from into BI360. But for instance, we here at Algorithm use HubSpot and use that to get a lot of metrics about traffic onto our website. Would that be another type of data source then that you could bring into BI360?
Yes, exactly. And I'm glad you brought it up. And really, whether it's HubSpot or CRM data or Google Analytics data, really we either have connectors for it, or we can use our SQL connector for it if it's SQL based, or we can use our CSV connector for everything else. But yes, there's really no limit to the type of data you can bring over to the data warehouse if you need to report against it.
Okay, terrific. And then the last question that I have, unless someone sends one in here in the last couple of minutes of our webinar, you mentioned about joining data sources in a report. And the question actually came in, how would you join data sources in a report? The example you were giving, I believe, was almost like an X and Y axis type of data source.
Right. So the example that I gave was around the website traffic that we get against the marketing dollars. And so those two, that is actually pretty easy to do because it's just, you know, in your report somewhere, bring in what the monthly visit for that month is, and then in a separate section in your report, you bring in the part where it shows the marketing dollars, and then you just use Excel to do, market visits divided by market dollars, and that's a KPI that you get. So that's not truly joining the different data sources. That's just doing it within Excel, setting up a formula. But with other disparate data sources, as long as there's a join field, and this is getting a little bit into SQL and the table structure, but as long as there's a join field within the two different disparate data sources, you have the ability to connect the two disparate data sources.
Oh, okay. And then they don't necessarily have to be, from the example from the question, X and Y axis type of data. They could be disparate data sources that you actually are merging together to get a more complete picture of the data?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Perfect. I don't have any other questions, but you answered all of them terrifically, and so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. If anybody does have a follow-up question or another question they'd like to ask in these last couple of minutes, please ask it. But I want to thank Oh-Hee Cho from Solver, our presenter today. Terrific presentation, Oh-Hee. I really think this is a tremendous vehicle for giving people a way to look at all the different types of data that they typically have.